Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Batjer. I'm concertmaster of the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, and I was an NYSOS alumni. I just figured it out from, I think, 1977 and 78. Yes, I'm very old. And it was really one of the most wonderful experiences of my young life. I was there, of course, when Sasha was there, and let's see. Jamie asked me to say what we did. I know that one of the years was really one of the great thrills of my life because I played the Bach triple with Peter Unchen and Chow Yong Lin, and we had such a great time together and became lifelong friends. It was really an extraordinary experience to be in New York and be there over the holidays, and I hope that all of you eventually get to do the same thing. One of the things, a few of the things that we will all talk about is what are our roles as leaders of in the orchestra. Um, I came to an orchestra life very late in my life. I didn't take an orchestra job until I was 40. I followed a different path. I was mainly just playing chamber music and pursuing a solo career for the early part of my career. And and at a certain point, I never really thought of myself as an orchestra player or of ever really necessarily wanting to be in an orchestra. But at a certain point, I started to love the repertoire and really felt like I was missing out on a huge part of my musical uh, experience. And at that very time, the concertmaster role at the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra came open. Jeffrey Kahane, who is a wonderful pianist, was the music director, and he and I had worked together as collaborative uh, recital partners. And I decided to take the audition. It was an absolute terrifying moment of my life. I'd never taken an orchestra audition. I knew none of the excerpts, and I had to learn them at the age of 40, being extremely pregnant with my second child. But I got very lucky and I got the job. And it really changed. It changed my life in a lot of ways. I think the preparation, which is something that I think all of you must be thinking about as young musicians, the preparation for an orchestra job. I'm not a perfect example of that because I really didn't have much preparation. But the one thing that translated very well into becoming concertmaster of a chamber orchestra was all my experience in chamber music. I think that that is the best advice I can give you, is that being an orchestra musician is no different than being a chamber musician or being a soloist. You have to be an all-rounded musician. And I think all those years of playing in a string quartet and a string trio sort of brought me to my role as a concertmaster in a very organic way. And it was it was really, in many ways, the chamber orchestra for me was a better fit than a symphony orchestra, I think. Um, Maybe not necessarily in repertoire, but I love both repertoire. I love symphonic repertoire and I love chamber orchestra. When I'm on a plane or traveling and they say, well, what do you do? I play in the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra. I go, oh, what is that? Is that like chamber music? Or people don't really understand the differences between chamber orchestra and chamber and symphony orchestras. Mainly, it's numbers and repertoire. And I think my role as a concertmaster of a chamber orchestra is maybe a little different. You're going to hear from Malcolm Lowe, a colleague, soon, and he will talk about his role as concertmaster of the Boston Symphony. But it, it also has to do with a music director. And Jeffrey Kahane, in my situation, is an extremely collaborative musician and trusted me or counted on me to really be the sort of strings coordinator. So it was it's very much a collaborative issue, but it's also just very intimate because I only have 8 people in my section, 15 violins. So I think just the nature of that, there's much more collaboration going on during rehearsals. I remember a colleague of mine, Martin Chalafour, who's concertmaster of the LA Philharmonic, came to rehearsal once and he said, God, what a weird vibe you guys have. He couldn't imagine, the conversations going on in the LA Philharmonic because there's just too many people to do that. Um, So it's been a really great experience. And I can't say I just don't regret one moment of changing midway through my life, the focus of my life. Of course, the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra is not a full time orchestra. We are a part time orchestra, which also fits well for me because I'm a teacher as well. I teach at the USC Thornton School and also at the Colburn School. So it allows me, and I play in a piano trio. So it allows me to do a lot of different things. And my hope, and I say this to my students all the time, and I'm going to say it to all of you, is that find variety in your musical life. Don't try to do just one thing because one thing can become stale and can become old. And I think if you just keep your eyes and your ears open into the ability to not become a chameleon, but to be able to transition from one part of your career to the next. For me personally, it was having my second child. It was very easy to travel all over the world with one child, but suddenly I was pregnant with a second child and I decided I wanted to be more stable here in Los Angeles. So the sort of circumstances of my own personal life dictated my career choices. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. And I see that Richard is up, so I will mute myself.
Hi, everybody. Margaret, we met a couple of years ago when we played that alumni concert, briefly. Um, I'm a horn player from Cleveland, and I played 2 years with the String Orchestra in New York. I think it was 86 and 87. The things that we did, the first thing that I played, and I remember this so vividly, walking out in Carnegie Hall at midnight on Christmas Eve, we played the first Brandenburg Concerto, which for horns is a huge, huge masterpiece and quite treacherous. And luckily I think I was 18, so it didn't seem that difficult at the time. Now, it would be a huge mountain to climb. Um, the following year, I was second horn that year. The following year, I was the first horn player. This was also with Sasha, certainly. Um, I remember an incredible Brahms double when I sat in the orchestra with my friend Pam Frank, playing the solo as soloist, and also Peter Wiley. It was just incredible to hear. And I've made some friends back in those 2 brief windows of time that I'm still quite close to now. So just remember that wherever you are, you're going to have lifelong friends, and so don't say anything dumb like I did. Just go forward from there. Unlike Margaret, I started in an orchestra when I was very young. I auditioned for the Cleveland Orchestra and got a position when I was 20 years old. And I often say that I knew everything before I got there, and then when I got to work in Cleveland in 1988, I realized incredibly quickly how unprepared I was for actually working, and the pace of the repertoire that goes by is incredibly fast. If you're in a school orchestra, I came from Curtis in Philadelphia. You have a couple of weeks of preparation for a concert. You're spoon-fed the repertoire. And as associate principal horn at that time in Cleveland, I would play the piano concertos and the Christmas concerts and things like that. Maybe one rehearsal, maybe a dress rehearsal, and one other rehearsal, and the rep goes by pretty quickly. So the level of preparation involved is completely different. And it felt for the first little while like I was, walking on a high wire. And I'd read all about how to do that, but all of a sudden there I was, 40 feet off the ground in front of a lot of people. My colleagues were very patient with me, luckily, and I'm eternally grateful for that because I really didn't have a clue what I was doing. After 7 years, our first horn decided to move over to the fourth horn chair. His name is Rick Solis. And became a very dear friend of mine and retired a few years back. And I auditioned for the principal horn chair, much more aware of what I would need to do, also sort of theoretically, because it's a long way between associate principal and principal in a situation like that. And I was happy enough and lucky enough to get that job, and I did it for just about 20 years. And then there became a fourth horn vacancy in my own section, and I wanted that desperately after a long time in what I felt like was a very hot seat. And so I've been the fourth horn player for about 5 years now. As I tried to explain to the Winds in a discussion we had yesterday, um, I'm the same person, and I hope that I am perceived as having treated people the same, whether I was the boss, and that's in big quotes, or in a supportive role. I very much respected the views of all my colleagues, and when I was the principal horn player, and I still do now, of course. So nothing has changed in that way for me. But having had several positions in the same orchestra, I have a pretty interesting perspective. The funny thing is, I have no perspective outside the Cleveland Orchestra because it's pretty much the only place I ever worked. Um, One of the reasons that I wanted the principal chair so badly, besides some glorious opportunities for solos within the orchestra, and also some glorious opportunities to stand in front of the orchestra and play solo pieces, of course, was that I would have a little more flexibility with my time off. Like Margaret just said, chamber music is the lifeblood of any orchestral player, any musician, and I've been in a brass quintet since I was a freshman in college at Curtis, and in the last decade I've gotten to participate at Marlborough every other year, and that's been really important for me spiritually. It's been a great opportunity to spend time with my family, and I always look forward to those opportunities to meet and work with other people. So I have a very limited perspective, but within that limited perspective, I've had a lot of different roles and enjoyed them both, all of them to an extent, and there are certainly hazards and pleasures about all of them. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Priscilla Lee. I'm the Associate Principal Cellist of the Philadelphia Orchestra. I would say that my journey getting to where I am is very similar to Margaret's. I won this job in 2016 when I was 36, and it was pretty late, after I was a student at Curtis, and after Curtis, I just wanted to play chamber music. I was one of those people in school, and I was in school with Teng, who's going to speak soon, but I was the one that just loved playing with my friends. And I would play, 7 or 8 different groups a semester. It was just one of those really amazing things that I got out of Curtis, and it's something that I wanted to do after I left Curtis. And I really just wanted to be a chamber musician. And it helped that I went to Marlborough and I played for CMS too. And I did all these groups. I was in a piano trio for 10 years. But it really was after I got married and I had 2 kids that I thought, oh, you know what? I might, my priorities are a little different now. I can't really travel so much, just pick up and go somewhere. I thought my husband is a violist in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and he's been in the orchestra since 1999. So, he was pretty much just set here in Philly. So I thought it would be so great to get a job in the orchestra. I did some short little stints in the Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia and with Opera Philadelphia, but I gave those up once I got this job in the orchestra. And I can honestly say that it changed my life so, so much in the fact that very much I wanted to learn the symphonic repertoire. I did feel like I was missing out, even though I had played all this chamber music. I wanted to play Beethoven symphonies. I wanted to play Strauss. I wanted to play Mahler symphonies. I wanted to just feel how it was to be on stage with this enormous sound of having winds and brass, and to have a bass section behind you. And so when this audition was announced for associate principal, I knew that this was my chance. You know, I knew that other people in the section weren't retiring anytime soon. So it was my first time taking a big orchestral audition with the intention that I wanted to win this. Like, I needed to get this, you know? And I had never approached an audition with that focus and that determination. And it really changed my life, that whole, probably 6 to 8 weeks of preparing for that audition. And it's still so fresh in my mind. It was only like 4 years ago. It was so fresh. And I really changed as a person, I think, as a musician and as a cellist. I went to the string seminar in 1997. I only did 1 year. It was when I was 17. I was a senior in high school. I grew up in California. I went to the Crossroads School, and I wanted to go to New York. I remember I wanted to go to New York so badly, and I thought it would be so fun and awesome to get into string seminar. And I was one of the young ones there. I wasn't in college yet, and I was in the back of the cello section. And I remember so vividly, we played Thomas Tallis, Vaughan Williams. We played, it was just so fun. I met so many people that I'm still friends with today. And I remember having great coachings with Michael Tree, and it was just a really fun time. So it was really nice to speak. Teng, you're next.
Hi everyone, my name is Teng Li, and I am the principal violist of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. I went to New York seminar in 2002 and 2003, and I think we played Beethoven 8. We did Midsummer Night's Dream, and one of the years we played Vaughan Williams' Thomas Tallis Fantasy, and I was the principal violist for both of the years, so I got to play the solo, and it was really cool. It was such a great experience because I think we had Chow Liang-ling sitting in the second orchestra. All these esteemed alumni were all in the second orchestra, and I was in the front and at Carnegie Hall playing a big solo. It was really exciting experience, and I think it was because of that I felt that experience at string seminar. I felt that playing orchestra can be amazing. So in 2004, I took an audition in the Toronto Symphony and became their principal violist. So I was really quite young. I really didn't know much about orchestra playing, and as Richard was saying, the program turnover is just so fast, and I just felt underprepared all the time, and there was not enough time to prepare, and there was not enough time to do anything. I was still in school, and going back and forth between Philadelphia and Toronto was just seemed like such a now I can't really remember much about the first year at all, but it was a good challenge, and I like challenges. So even though I think my teacher at Curtis, Michael Tree, probably would have preferred if I played more chamber music and became a chamber musician, which I wanted to do too, but I wanted to take the challenge. And over the years, I think it became more and more clear to me. Symphonic music, the reason most composers write symphonic music, there is a lot to it, and there are good reasons. And just like there are great chamber music works, there are amazing symphonic music. So I feel very fortunate that I have had the opportunity to learn these pieces and perform them. A couple of years ago, I took an audition to join the Los Angeles Philharmonic. So now I have moved from Canada to California, and as Margaret says, it's very warm here today. uh, um, I think coming to this orchestra from Toronto has made me learn a lot more. First of all, I think in different orchestras there are different culture and different way of interpreting music and how to understand or how to react to the conductor's beats. So when I first came, I remember the first concert we did a Schumann opera, and I did not know where to play because the way of where the beat was totally different than what I had been used to. So in my first year in Los Angeles, I learned to listen more. So in Toronto, I think because we all knew each other really well, and I just play, and it's pretty much the job is done. But here, to join a new orchestra, learning how they play, listening was a very big part of this experience, and not just listening to other sections, but also listening from behind me what the section members are doing, and to get to know them better. So listening has become a very, very important part of the orchestra playing that I'm doing here currently. But I feel like what Margaret said about chamber music has so much truth, because in chamber music, when you play with each other, you're basically reacting to each other, and there is a lot of listening and a lot of reacting, and it's actually just like that in symphonic music also. I stare at the concertmaster, I stare at the conductor, and sometimes I stare at the cello principal or the other principals. But mostly, I feel like if we breathe together and listening to each other, it's just like playing chamber music, and we react to each other, and it's a lot of fun when we all do it. So I really enjoyed my musical path playing in orchestra. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see everyone here. We don't see Jamie on our screen. I don't know if our participants can see him or not, but I have a different way of starting this, and that is to talk about observing leadership that we have the chance to see. And I want to point out something that is happening these times, these days, that we have right in front of us, that is so visible and so important, and that is Jamie's presence with us at all these things. And how we frequently think of leadership as something perhaps more aggressive or assertive, but Jamie does this in a way that he is there for us. He doesn't have to be at all these sessions. He could just sit back and do what he usually does, but he's there. And it's such an important, great example to all of us, right? As we continue this journey of well, I call it really blessed love to be able to do what we do with music. And I just wanted to start out by talking about that and thank Jamie for that. My path, I would say, probably is different than most of you. I grew up in a very rural area in Canada Fortunately, both my parents were musicians, not professionally, most of their lives. I grew up on a farm, and we essentially farmed our farm in the summer and made music and taught music during the year. And that included starting some ensembles, just very informally. And I found myself quite early, because of being able to play the violin early and read music, etc., at the front of these violin sections and small orchestras, quote unquote, leading them when I was, sometimes 30 or 40 years younger than everyone else, but just because I could play. And it was such a great experience, going from that into smaller youth orchestras, et cetera, through high school and everything, to just be able to feel what's required, both practically as an instrumentalist, and what orchestral playing was, the different things that can happen. You see that more, I would say, in orchestras that are amateur orchestras. You begin to realize, oh, there's so many things to do here. You can't possibly get everything. But the fact is that everyone has to be included. There's no exclusion in our orchestras if you want everybody to function, and if you want the greatest result, everybody has to be included. And that was a great lesson for me, because to this day, you watch, especially older generation orchestras, where the participation level in NBC, for example, or some other orchestras, from first to last player, is something quite remarkable. It's always something I've strived to attain for our, my orchestra, whatever that was. And it's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing. So I think that our path in terms of your pursuit can be very different. But if you end up in an orchestra or in a leadership role, it's really important to remember how you got there, what kinds of things are important for everyone to be able to participate in making music. One of the great things, I loved everything that everyone said about chamber music and leadership, and Richard about not having changed. I feel that also, that I haven't changed. And Priscilla and Tong, I loved everything you commented about. One of the great joys that I always found was when you play certain pieces like the Tchaikovsky, you get to the last movement and you play through that piece, and you experience, if it's a good, well, even if it's not a great performance, it's a good performance, you experience something of the intent of composers that you cannot experience in any way by yourself. And it makes you realize that almost death that takes place in the last movement there, you've all felt that on stage, what that feels like. And those are the moments that we say to ourselves, oh, there's nothing better than that. It's just incredible. And I love the feeling of an idea of chamber music. And my most rewarding sense of that has always been when I have a whole violin section that is acting like one voice or two voices. And you can feel everybody actually participating, not individually, but also as a section. And that's such a rewarding thing to experience. And I think it was Margaret said that she really hoped that everyone got to experience NYSO for real. I had a fantastic experience my last year of Curtis coming to NYSO, and I still remember it, the Mozart and Haydn symphonies that I played then. I still draw on that experience to inform all the character and different things that I've done. So it's great to hear everyone here, and thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Afendi, and I'm the principal clarinetist of the Cleveland Orchestra. I joined the orchestra in the fall of 2017, and it's the only audition that ever worked out. I'm happy about that, I guess. But prior to that, I was a professional student. I completed 4 different degree programs or certificate programs. I'm an Ethiopian Canadian that has ended up here in Cleveland. And when I emigrated to Canada with my family, this whole world of music was a very new experience. And I wasn't particularly tickled by it until midway through high school. And I started taking private lessons and got involved with my local youth orchestra, and it's just sort of clicked. And of course, at the time, I knew I loved orchestral repertoire, but I didn't necessarily see that as the only path. I didn't see any one particular path. I tried to just get as much experience as possible. I played in a lot of wind ensembles. I played in a lot of chamber music ensembles, you name it. And I was playing a lot of solo stuff. I'd enter as many concerto competitions as possible. I was soloing almost every year for a while. I thought, man, there's no end to any of this. And then as I got further along into my studies at school, I started to focus a lot more on orchestral playing, just because that's the way music programs often lend themselves when you're a wind player. Most of the playing that you do ends up being orchestral stuff. And, luckily it fit. I really loved the magnified chamber music experience that it offered. Again, I was in school until I was 27. And up until that point, I was very fortunate to be able to sub in a lot of orchestras, both in Canada and the US. And I got to see a lot of great leaders. I got to work with a lot of great leaders, not just on the podium, but especially in the clarinet section. And I got to see people that were truly leading by example and were inviting other people to join them, as opposed to leading by command. And I found true inspiration in that, and I try to adopt that in my own approach to the orchestra. I try my very best to make sure that I'm paying attention to how my section mates feel, and that they feel heard, and that we're all contributing to a collective experience. And that's stuff that I wasn't able to pick up necessarily in school, because when you're in school, everyone's on their own boat trying to make sure that they're not gonna, sink. And we all have our own insecurities that we're trying to hide at the same time. But it wasn't until, I was able to see what worked and what didn't work in a lot of these professional ensembles that I started to see the bigger picture. What's more important than trying to make sure that you're projecting right, that you're counting correctly, you're making the right sound at the right time. I think when you invite others to listen to the same thing, to contribute to the same thing, there's something just clicks. It just starts to hum, the collective voices coming together, and it becomes a completely different, enriching experience than perhaps what you train for in school, what you don't expect. So I didn't have the fortune of ever participating in NYSOS. I think I was already a senior citizen by the time I learned of its existence. But I have come across so many friends that have gone through the program and have spoken such wonderful things about it. that I'm thrilled for each of you to get to participate. I hope you get to, if you haven't done this live, I hope you get to do it live very soon. Yeah, I think I'm in really, really distinguished company here. I'm very humbled by that. It's really great to hear all the different perspectives of what leadership can stand for. I think it's a lot. There's a lot more dimension to it than we often think. So thanks for having me.
Well, if apparently the students are being shy about asking questions, Johanna says. So, oh no, there is one. Maeve Whelan. Rahana, do you want her to ask the question or should I just read it?
Feel free to turn on your camera and your mic and ask your question.
Hi, thank you so much for being here, everybody. This has been really awesome. I was just wondering if any of you might talk a little bit about what role orchestra leaders play in either shaping or kind of maintaining the traditions of like sound or certain musical traditions that particular orchestras have and are known for.
That's such a great question. And I'm going to answer real quickly. I stepped into, I think we are all keepers of our chairs. In other words, the history of what came before us. I worshiped Iona Brown as a young violinist. And she was concertmaster at the LA Chamber Orchestra for many years and then eventually leader of the Chamber Orchestra. And I think that it took me 12 years of being concertmaster of this orchestra before I would even attempt to play the Four Seasons with the orchestra, because she had such a profound ownership of that piece. And I think about it a lot. I thought about it a lot when I first got the job, that I had big shoes to fill. And I wanted to honor her. And I think in terms of sound production, when I'm sure all of us would say every orchestra has their own sound, their own style of articulation, of vibrato, of all of those things. And this orchestra was very rooted in the traditions of Iona. But of course, orchestras evolve as well. And I think in a position of leadership, you have to be very careful to not suddenly take a left turn or a right turn with an orchestra. I can't remember who was speaking about how you have to listen to your colleagues. Teng was saying you have to listen to your colleagues from behind. They were all in the orchestra with Iona. I was the new kid on the block. So I think to walk that line respectfully and yet also be able to start to define your own concept of sound and your own concept of articulations, especially in a chamber orchestra where there's so few numbers. That was a very interesting and very powerful thing that I had to try to walk that line. Anyone else?
I can speak about, the Philadelphia Orchestra has so many traditions. And I was lucky that I was a student at Curtis, so I was hearing this orchestra a lot, and the orchestra was so involved with Curtis, and so you just kind of saw the style and this Philadelphia sound, where especially as string player, everyone's just wailing away and playing as loud as they can. That's very much like a Philadelphia tradition. It's something that was really obvious. The moment I sat down in my chair, that first rehearsal, I was like, whoa, this sound was just incredible. And there's definitely pieces that in the orchestra, with Stokowski, with Ormandy, all the past music directors of this orchestra go way, way back. And there's definitely some signature things that the orchestra does. And you just listen and you just follow along, and it feels great to be part of something like that has so much tradition and history in it.
Can I ask a question? Am I allowed? This is a question to Richard and Afendi. I find something so interesting. I grew up as a little kid. I was 12 years old when I was studying in Cleveland. I was studying with Joseph Gingold, who was then the concertmaster of the Cleveland Orchestra. So, and then as I grew up, I became very close to George Zell, the conductor of the Cleveland Orchestra at that time. And I played many times with the Cleveland Orchestra with George Zell. George Zell has been gone. He died almost 50 years ago. And you've had 3 really great music directors since then. Yet when I hear the Cleveland Orchestra today, many, many times I think to myself, my God, it's like George Zell is standing there. That's how the orchestra sounds. How does this happen?
May I address that a little bit? Sorry, Afendi. I know you didn't play for Zell either. And people ask me if I did, Jamie, but I was 2 years old when Mr. Zell died.
Right.
I didn't. I know that all 3 of the successors after Zell have absolutely hated being compared to him and have been very resentful of the standard that they have to bring themselves up to somebody else's work. Dochnani always said, you know, I give a great concert and Zell gets all the great credit for it. And I know our current music director doesn't like the credit to go back to someone who left their tenure 50 years ago. Let's just say that. When I joined, Zell was gone for almost 2 decades, but I played with a lot of the musicians that worked for him. And a lot of the standards and traditions and style of the ensemble, I could hear from the recordings that I heard back then. And of course, when a new music director comes in, the style changes sometimes pretty drastically or sometimes not that drastically. But I was going to, if I had the opportunity, say that if a new section member comes in, the voice of the section changes a little bit, and it should. And if a new section leader comes in, you know, it'll change that much more because they have a sort of a prominent voice in the ensemble. Of course, we all know the Philly string sound, and it's just incredible, and it was incredible when I was in Curtis. And it has a lot to do, I guess people will say that in Philly with the old academy, that you had to play your butts off just to be heard, etc. But it has a lot to do with the hall where you play. Articulation has to be a certain way, projecting, balance, things like that. So there's a reason things remain the same and are loath to change, but things move incrementally. I don't know, Effendi, you have less years of perspective, but you know what the traditions are.
Wonderful things. The only things I can add are from my own experience. The very first time I got to play in Severance Hall with this orchestra, it was abundantly clear by the sound that the people around me were making what I had to do. And as in addition to what Richard said about what Severance Hall offers, there's something that happens. I can only speak about the clarinet perspective. There's something that happens with the clarinet sound in Severance Hall that I haven't felt anywhere else, in a way that helped magnify the internal specs of the sound. And I can only imagine what kind of sensation that gives every other instrumentalist on stage. But to go back to my previous point, it just seemed like from the very first second that I started playing in this orchestra, everyone had a clear vision of what was expected. And it was so clear in their playing that I had no choice but to gravitate towards it, So I think there's something about, of course, the individual sound affecting the shape of the orchestra. But I think there's something else that happens when we're playing this instrument that is Severance Hall, something that unifies us all, that I think we'd have to try pretty hard to break out of that mold to some degree. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. So.
Okay.
Jamie, I might add something to that as well. Playing in Symphony Hall, which probably most of you have played in Symphony Hall, and I would say that that's such a major influence on an orchestra in general. And probably if any conductor is worth their salt, it has an effect on them as well. And you know, I think that it also can depend very much on sort of the cycles that you go through with new music directors, et cetera. When I came to the orchestra, there were still a lot of old guard French musicians in the orchestra. My section was full of these unbelievably great French violinists that had been brought there from Munch. And so for me, that was really interesting in combination with our music director, Seiji Ozawa, who was always wanting us to have a more Berlin sound, confronting this very different background of Munch and other French musicians, and then combined with the hall. So I think there was sort of a flexibility there that developed, and you know, some of the traditions that are passed on. I'm reminded of a story by one of my colleagues. He said that concerts with Munch, the whole orchestra would come off the stage just basically shaking. The hair on their arms would be up. It would just be, and I remember thinking, yeah, that's what we're after. That's what we're trying to do with everybody in the hall that's listening to us play. And you know, totally different person, Levine, came to conduct, and he was in a period where there are lots of descriptions of what he was doing during a certain time, but conducting very, very small gestures. But the point was, he wanted us, the orchestra, to throw our emotions and our sound out from us. He didn't want things to be coming from him. And it was a really interesting thing. And that attitude, I think, also has remained with the orchestra. So we've gone through, the BSO has gone through a few different changes like that I think are really interesting.
Oh, something's wrong. Can't hear you. Something's wrong.
You sound like a munchkin.
Yes. Yes.
It's an electronic voice. I don't know.
Hi, Frank.
There must be something wrong with his internet.
Frank, you didn't pay your internet bill.
I see a question coming in from YouTube that says, what ways has period practice technique impacted modern orchestral playing? And I just want to talk to Teng for a second, because I remember in my orchestra, we have a lot of, because we are a chamber orchestra, we do a lot of Baroque playing, and I've worked with some of the great Baroque specialists in the world, and it's really a great pleasure because I had absolutely no experience in Baroque playing as a student of Curtis when I was a student at Curtis, and more in my early career. But I remember going to a concert recently with a Baroque specialist with the LA Philharmonic, and Teng had you had some solos. Did you have some solos in that concert? But it was so interesting seeing, you know, our orchestra is like, we have to be a chameleon. Sometimes we use Baroque bows, sometimes we don't, but we have to learn to be like this with new Baroque people in terms of their articulations and their style and all of that. But I was so interested to see how the LA Philharmonic responded to, that Baroque specialist, and maybe you should speak to that, because I thought it was a really interesting concert.
Well, so we play a lot of in LA Phil. We play a lot of contemporary pieces. Pieces are written in modern day. So it's unusual actually for us to do Baroque music. But last season, as Margaret said, this Baroque specialist, I cannot pronounce her name. She's French, and she's a fantastic harpsichord.
Emmanuel, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And so she came and she did a few pieces. I think a set of violin concertis with Martin Schaffer, and also so we all sat differently on stage. But I was so excited because we never get to do stuff like that, and here I am trying to practice during the pandemic. Bach Sixth Suite, which I never get a chance to play, but I'm trying to listen to Anna Belsma and trying to understand how really this should be done, but without sound like I'm trying too hard and still want to sound musical. She was an amazing person, and she was not just you have to play off the string here and you have to play non-vibrato. She was all about different effects, and she was talking about this character, that character, and this place we can take a little time. And she was so free, and it was eye-opening to experience Baroque music like that. In my opinion, that was one of the highlights for me last season. So I know that for maybe for some colleagues who are not the only thing I wish I did is that I wish I had a better bow. I didn't have my transitional bow, so I use the modern bow, and it's not quite the same. And I think it's really important to experiment and to learn, at least to know, to try to know how it can be. This music can be very exciting, and yeah.
But I think of all of us, well, few of you are much, much younger, but there's nothing like, I love embracing new techniques and new ideas from Baroque specialists. But there was something about being on Carnegie Hall stage and playing Brandenburg 3 with Slasha Schneider. Full bow, full vibrato. And, we all remember that. I'm sure all of us, that that's magical just as much as the new techniques and the more traditional or politically correct ways.
I think we're getting a message from Rohanna that we're supposed to wrap it up. So I'd like to thank everybody. This was just fascinating, and it was incredible, really, really. And you all are incredible. And thank you so much for being here. So we'll see you later.
Thank you, Jamie.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.